Now, obviously, one of the things that people are sort of commenting about this is that we didn't really get a conclusive finish to the match. Now, this match isn't the first time. I mean, even at Raw, hey, guess what happened at the end? This seems to be a regular occurrence. But even with these type of feuds, because like right now, it's like, hey, guess what? Now it's Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt, and Dean Ambrose came out of Raw, and it's like, you, Bray Wyatt. It's like, what happened to this whole thing that's been happening with Seth Rollins? And you, Keith, you mentioned something that's really interesting. Is the WWE afraid of giving us clean finishes?
I think they are, but with people that they're establishing, I think they're so afraid to make the people that they're going to make the future lose cleanly just because it'll hurt them. You know what I mean? Jelly Bean?
I get you, man. I get you. You got to protect. You got to put on that condom, boy.
But does it really protect them? Or is it just, do we just get tired of seeing the same old dirty thing over and over?
Yeah, I don't know how I could pull back from that condom comment, but I get you.
So just pull out.
Oh, my God. Anyway.
What happened to our clean tag, gentlemen?
I don't know, but no, I understand where you're coming from, because it's like, if you give a conclusive finish, you can make one guy look better than the other one. So when they move on to another feud, there's like a pecking order. Obviously, by doing the whole interruption thing, then that sort of doesn't happen. So right now you have Dean Ambrose here, and then Seth Rollins with like the whole authority Randy Orton situation, and both of them look good. So Ryan, where do you sort of rely on this? Do you think that the WWE can justify the lack of clean finishes?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if what I'm about to say makes sense, but there's sort of this dynamic where I talk about how wins and losses mean nothing, but they mean nothing in a certain way. When it comes to within their own, let's say kayfabe competitive story making or whatever. I worded that terribly. But you know what I mean? Winning to get a title shot. Yeah. That generally doesn't mean anything. John Cena could lose 10 matches in a row and get a title shot the next night. But the wins and losses do mean something when it's kind of how important you are in the company.
Yeah.
So it's weird how it works like that. But I think WWE just, they've backed themselves into a corner where they've made wins and losses mean so much about how important a guy is in the company, like so much that they're afraid to, let people lose in a certain way. They're terrified to just have people trade wins every once in a while and things like that. So
I think the word you're looking for is establishment. Like an establishing win or an establishing loss. That's what they're afraid to do.
But it's like they back themselves into a corner countless times where they put two guys in a match who they deem can't afford to lose,
Because you notice they don't do it with people like Randy Orton and John Cena. Like, that was our clean finish for the night at Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, and I think that's where guys like Chris Jericho come up, RVD, which is like, we get it. You can have a veteran, but if you have them lose every match, what does it matter that they're a veteran? But at the same time, like with Jericho, then he wins a couple of matches, becomes one of the top heels, becomes one of the greatest characters in his feud with Shawn Michaels a couple of years ago. So The Miz is another great example. The Miz was in a huge losing streak, main event at WrestleMania. Now everything else is a different story. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, what pretty much Ryan said, wins and losses don't really matter. It's those one or two conclusive victories out of the 30, 40 that they may have in a year that really make a character. So maybe does that sort of go where you were talking about?
Sort of. And I think they get really afraid with having guys like how Rusev probably is now, having guys they're building up lose. They're terrified to have them get a couple, like they got to go on this huge win streak all the time. But generally, like what we saw with Ryback, once they start losing, then it looks really bad. But if he had just lost a couple times down the road, now it doesn't look as bad. So it almost makes it worse when they go on these undefeated streaks. And then once they lose, it makes them seem like really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could even make the case for guys like Bo Dallas. There are a ton of guys where basically they give them a lot of time, and then it's like, hey, you're just gonna lose now. Yeah.
We kind of talked, I can't remember how long ago it was, but we talked about this at some point. When somebody debuts, it's like a huge peak, and they keep climbing and climbing, and then when they lose, it's just boom, right into a valley. It's almost like they need to establish a middle ground and have them coast at that middle ground.
That's almost why they have factions like Nexus, NWO, because since there's a bunch of guys instead of that one guy, it sort of masks those losses, I guess.
Last point to summarize is basically, is WWE afraid of clean finishes? Yes, because they want to have their cake and eat it too. That's exactly why.
Exactly, Ryan. Great way to summarize. Now, before we split the show into the part that I know you're waiting for, Keith is getting that money shot ready.
Oh, yeah.